The three presenters are Macarena Blum from the Food and Agricultural Organization. She will be the first one, and she will explore in a more general way on the role of producers' organizations in RAS from the demand side as well as from the supply side. And then we are getting to some more practical examples. One from Mr. Buzuboro from Rwanda, right? Yes, thank you, from the Belgian Development Cooperation, and then the third presentation from Mr. Frenzel. Where is he? Ah, Mr. Frenzel, okay, from GFRAS. And yeah, so I would like to invite, if there are no more questions from your side at the moment, then I would like to invite Macarena Blum, please.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here to talk about this topic today. The emphasis is on the role of farmer organizations in demand-led extension. Often we talk about demand-led, but whether it's really demand-led is another question. And I try to clarify what that is, or could be, and what's the role of the farmers as driver of the demand, and look at the various implications. So, what is demand-led extension? It's very distinct from needs-based extension, which we used to have in our traditional extension systems, where extension agents go out. They have questionnaires, they ask the farmer or they consult farmers on what they would like. Often we end with a shopping list. And this is very different from actually a demand-led system, where we have discussions among the farmers, and they define their needs themselves. They set priorities, which is also important, and they formulate their demand, and they have to negotiate it. Why is demand-led extension so important? At least it would be logic then when farmers demand that it also would be relevant to what they actually need. So we can conclude that tailor-made services are much easier when we have a complete demand. Pluralism is also important in this respect, because if we have diverse providers, they can adapt to that demand much easier than when we have only one provider. Accountability is reinforced through the demand-led mechanisms and through the fact, if possible, when farmers actually pay for the services, then the service providers are accountable to the farmers, because it's the farmer who pays for the services. The farmer as driver in the demand-led side of extension, I see two major mechanisms. I see the mechanism to organize demand. This is an organizational challenge among farmers. And I see the mechanisms for financing the demand-led extension. The mechanisms to organize demand, I already said, mentioned this chain of activities which are required. The farmers need to identify their advisory needs, set priorities, formulate their demand, express their demands to service providers, and negotiate with service providers. For how much do you provide me? What are your competencies, and so forth. This requires, of course, capacities within the farmer organizations to do this, and it requires financial resources in order to organize this demand. We need financial support if it should be really demand-led. And demand-led, I really understand that farmers are empowered to pay for their services. So we need financial support for the farmer organizations to have that empowerment, and to make services accountable to the farmers. So, and then we have, of course, lots of financial mechanisms who could support actually the farmers, from co-financing mechanisms with fee for services. There could be funds going directly to the farmer organizations, and they then look for services for their members. We know the cases of NATS in Uganda. ProRima is using funds which are managed by farmer organizations. In Senegal, you also have a General Development Fund. I think it's managed by ASPODEP, to which farmer organizations can apply. And the farmer organizations, of course, they can hire extension services. This is most of the case with cooperatives. They earn money through their activities and can easier afford than farm organizations, associations, to pay also specialized advisors at times to provide them the services. But I think still we are here at the beginning. We have not yet, I think, developed sufficient mechanisms on how to support farmers and farmer organizations, so that really a demand-led system could be put in place. We have some experience, but I think there is much more to do. For a demand-led system, I think also the role of farmers in knowledge management and networking is a different one. In the old system, the farmers were provided messages. They are still, today they still need information which is provided, but they have the power to select what comes to them by SMS, what comes to them by websites. But overall, I think farmers need to take a more proactive role in looking for information, in searching for knowledge, in looking what trainings could I do to perform better. Regarding direct access to knowledge, I think farmers need then more able to directly access knowledge and not only through third parties. This puts a challenge on how we put our information on websites, on radio, on other media. I think the third component which is important regarding knowledge management is actually the contribution of farmers to knowledge exchange, their own experience, their own knowledge. We can no longer, I think, do without it. Also regarding monitoring and evaluation, the involvement of farmers is required for having more relevance, efficiency, effectiveness, to actually assess relevance, efficiency, and effectiveness and impact. The farmers need to be involved to have a say on this. For example, FAO has now in several countries reviewed extension systems and always implied farmer organizations in doing it. When redesigning extension policies and programs, all the stakeholders, extension stakeholders, but also farmers, need to be involved in doing it. Evaluation of programs or projects and services, the farmers need to be involved, and farmer organizations, particularly when it comes to large programs. It's not only a matter of involving individual farmers, but it's really a matter of involving farmer organizations who have a larger stake and a better overview of the whole topics. Then the assessment of advisory services themselves. The only example I know here is from a mobile app which China has used to actually ask the farmers how they are satisfied with the services of the extension people, and they did this by an app. They asked very few questions, they got back the answers, and based on this assessment, farmer satisfaction, have you adopted the technology, and I think that was the third question. They then gave a topping up to the extension agents when they had a good assessment. There is also a role of farmer organizations in the supply side of extension, meaning as provider of extension services, but also there's a governance role of farmer organizations in the extension and the innovation system, meaning they should be represented in the decision-making bodies of extension systems. They should be implicated in policy formulation process, and they should be participating in actually, not day-to-day, but maybe monthly or weekly planning of extension services. The case study from Pakistan, which is here mentioned, we have done in Pakistan, where the farmers actually, in a very demand-led way, they identified and then they provided what they need to the district, and they looked for funding and actually seeing how the project could be implemented. Then there are several ways FOs can provide services. I think most of them I already mentioned. There can be farmer-to-farmer learning. Farmer organizations are also starting to manage information and training centers, or they recruit advisors. The promotion of farmer organizations, of course, is indispensable if you want to have a demand-led system. Now, the implication and challenges. On the demand side, we definitely need capacity development, promote farmer organizations, strengthen their organizational and financial capacities, and make them being part of decision-making bodies, as I just mentioned, and planning and M&E. We would need financial support from government or donors to FOs, because I think setting up the demand side, at least at the beginning, I don't think we can expect that farm organization can do it from their own resources, but in the long run, possibly. And the fee for services will depend on the capacity of the different categories of farmers to pay such fees, or they can indirectly be subsidized by funds given to the farm organization. And of course, in a demand-led system, the farmers would need to know how can I get access to providers? Which providers are available? How do I choose these providers? And what services do they provide to me under what condition? I think this is my last slide. The implications on the supply side. The farmers and their organizations are partners in a demand-led system. They are not the beneficiaries, should not be. We need the engagement of all farmers, meaning extension services also, they have to try to reach poor farmers, women and young farmers. It's a major challenge, and extension was always accused of not really addressing poor farmers, but rather better off farmers. And I think this challenge remains. In a demand-led system, I think the brokerage role of advisors is emphasized, because we have to make more and more the farmer capable of making the decisions and not doing the decisions at the service supplier side. We need services that can respond to demand. This is important. lean, flexible, specialized. Some might be general, but we need more and more specialized and multidisciplinary services. And therefore, we would also need collaboration and synergies among service providers. And even if I receive a request, are the service providers able to admit, I can't provide these services, but I can direct you to another service provider who knows what you need. Service providers will need a marketing strategy. How do I sell my services? How do I convince the farmers that I can provide the best services? What are signs of quality of my services for which I can convince the farmers? And the service providers should be transparent and really say, here's the community of service providers, and here are our services, and at what price. So far, thank you for your attention.
Good. Thank you very much, Magdalena Blum, for your presentation on demand-led approach of FAO on extension. Are there any questions of understanding or comments on that type of approach to extension as it was presented? Yes, please. Can you please hand over?
Thank you. Here she talked about the demand and supply on the advisory services. But when we come to the market strategies and look at the demand and supply at the market level, what is GFRAS provide for marketing extension? Because in some countries, extension is stopped at the harvest stage. So we need some advices and from GFRAS is the demand and supply side at the market level to convince the value. Thank you.
I can reply directly. My understanding of extension is not limited to production. It's also advisory services along the value chain, not only to production. No? So that's just as a clarification.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because that was my question. Because I probably know it. Probably I don't have enough time, but it is
the service along the value chain. But the other factor is in the model that you are displaying. We debated this model a lot with our partners from FAO and others. And inclusive in the model is the fact of building the capacity within the farmers' organization themselves, like the cooperative. For example, we have a situation now where cooperatives now bulk purchase inputs and sell to the members. They collect all the produce and market directly to the supermarket and behalf of the members. And they are providing, from the services, from the fees, they are providing their own supplementary extension. So services, therefore using the ministry extension as more subject matter specialist backup, like when it has really technical problems and things like that. So I'm going to cover because I guess we don't have enough time, but inclusive in that kind of a model is the fact that ultimate aim or ultimate goal is to ensure that we're self-sustainable in most of the services.
Would you like to comment on that briefly?
Yeah, I'm actually looking for examples because I would further like to analyze what demand-led systems are out there now, particularly what are the financial mechanisms, the experiments on this. And if you know of any, please write to me, tell me about these cases, because I think it's very important to evaluate this.
Okay, thank you. Then I take a last comment from this side.
Thanks very much, Magdalena. The plant clinics are entirely demand-led. You set these clinics up in marketplaces, you don't know what's coming at you, and therefore you have to react towards them. Now, how they're financed, you can analyse the contribution made by an organisation such as CABI that's helped establish them all. But then you can also measure the contributions made by people in terms of staff time, whether that's likely to continue or not, and whether after you withdraw the funding from the scheme, somebody's willing to commit towards it in the longer term. And this has been going since 2004 in Bolivia, 2006 in Uganda. So there's a huge amount of information there available for FAO, and I'm sure Tammy would welcome the collaboration in looking at them, because that will provide you lots of insights as to how difficult it is to keep them going. And yet some people have taken them on, at least one NGO has taken them on, and one private organisation that runs them as part of the farmer support service. The difficulty they have is if they expand their business to the private organisation in North Kivu, they have to bear the whole burden of employing 100 farmer support staff and training them all, because there's no public service available to them. So there's a huge diversity of cases we can discuss later and follow that up.
Okay. On sustainability. I would like to take one more comment, two more comments, but I think then we have to move on for the two other presentations.
Thanks. Thanks for that. Just a comment really into what I heard this morning as well on the fact that advisory services are probably more taken up by wealthier farmers or bigger farmers than the smaller, poorer farmers. It's probably not a bad thing because, certainly in my experience, working, you know, if advisory services work with the farmers that are willing and able to expand, we'll call it, there's a spin-off onto the next level because they're looking at them and they're actually learning from each other. So I think it's not a bad thing. I think it's very important to continue to work with the better guys as regards who pays. That's a different issue. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I think no need to comment on that, right? Sorry, but I have one more person, and then we go on with the presentation to have 5 minutes at the end also, then maybe your intervention.
Thank you. I think as a comment, a lot of producers in the rural areas are women, but a lot of the extension agents are men. And we often forget that fact. We have an example in Mozambique, in Mugebe, where although the majority of the extension workers are men, Mugebe has got a majority of the extension workers as women. And the impact is being seen that the women farmers are able to adopt technologies much better from the women advisors than they are from men, and it's working very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this comment. And thank you, Magdalena Blum, for your presentation. And now I would like to call on Dr. Buzu Guru from Rwanda.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My presentation is going to focus on the efficient use of FFS to ensure inactive participation of producers in delivering rural advisory services, and also to show the role that these producers in private sectors, these smallholder farmers, can play in the on-farm genetic resources conservation, which is a topic very important for the sustainability of the agricultural production system. So, my presentation is going to be organized around these following points. First of all, I will focus on repositioning what is the FFS approach, and then I will comment about the key components and conditions for success of the approach. And then I go through some examples in Rwanda, and then we'll discuss about the role of FFS in the broader rural advisory services system, and then we'll conclude by drawing some conclusions. So now, the FFS, it is seen as a participatory extension approach, where methods of non-formal adult education methods are used, meaning that the people who are involved in FFS, they are not considered as not having any experience. They have a lot of experiences. The only thing you are doing is to rearrange them and to update them about some missing points. They do discovery-based learning techniques where they conduct experiences and then they analyze the situation and take the decision. Can I
relate the mics because it's in the other room? Can you just hold it a bit?
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So they do conduct experience and then do analysis of data and then take decisions. So the process of decision making is really focused on through FFS. Farmers, they are involved in the different steps, starting from selection of participants, selection of the future facilitators, the identification of the constraints they are having to afford, the elaboration of curriculum, conducting the experiences, analyzing the data, and then taking the decision. Meaning that the trainers who are there are not seen as teachers, they are just facilitators, which makes these farmers becoming actors. They are not just beneficiaries, they become farmers, and the process is completely owned by themselves. They come to learn together on a study plot, and they conduct these experiences. So now, as we are seeing, a lot of interventions are claiming to do FFS, but in reality, there are conditions to be respected. Here we have some key components for an FFS. We need to have a permanent group of farmers who come to learn together. If you don't have a permanent group of farmers coming to learn together, you cannot qualify to be an FFS. They have to have a study plot where they conduct their experiences, where they do their observations. And then they need to have a qualified facilitator. This qualified facilitator is very key in the process of FFS. And then, based on the specific challenges which are prevailing in the environment, they elaborate a learning curriculum. And as we are having some costs to support some facilitation which are needed, we need also to have a program leader. In the case I'm talking about, which is BTC, Belgian Cooperation Agency, in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture of Rwanda, who are playing this role of program leader. Now, we have also what we call non-negotiable conditions. These are season-long. In any FFS to be successful, we have to go through a process of season-long training. The RAS agroecosystem analysis, which is the decision-making tool, has to be done, and the farmers participating in any FFS have to be capable of conducting analysis. They have to go through group dynamics, which facilitates the participation of everybody, and the special topics. So, some special topics related to the conditions which are prevailing there. So here, I'm just illustrating the process of season long. It means that the process has to be conducted from plantation, land preparation, plantation, up to the harvest. The study plot is there. The group which is running daily very regularly is there, and we have a facilitator who is there to facilitate the process during the whole cropping season. This FFS approach is seen as a way of making an integration of research and extension and farmers. It is the space, it is the interface where all of these three components, which are very important for agriculture extension or rural advisory services, come together to interact and to develop topics for learning or topics for research or to solve the problems. It is completely different from the traditional model of top-down, where the researchers have to develop technologies and transfer them to extension, and the extension are just dictating to farmers what to do. So this involves the farmers who are now have a better understanding and can really play a role as actors. Now, in Rwanda, how has it been applied? we have used the ICM, Integrated Crop Management packages at the entry point to do this FFS. And the innovation here was that the candidate facilitators were selected among the communities. It is the communities, the farmers who selected their own neighbors to become facilitators, and it has been implemented on a commodity-based specificity. The TOT was, as well as the FFS, was organized as a season-long trainings, and here just an example to illustrate how the technologies which are disseminated through this ICM are very simple. To manage the cassava mosaic disease, we have just gone to farmers and identified the challenges, and it is through the selection of cuttings, how they are treated, how progressively they eliminate the diseased materials to come up with a clean plot by the end. The result is that whatever the crop, we have seen that by using these ICM packages, we have a significant increase of the productivity. Here we illustrate just from one variety, farmer's variety of banana, the traditionally obtained size of bud, and after application of ICM, the increase of productivity. So it happens in banana, in cassava, in potato, whatever the varieties. And this has contributed farmers to get more production and to get more product to put at the market. And they started to conserve, to do on-farm conservation of their genetic resources. Now, in the context of broader rural service advisory, FFS contributes to make available the proximity, qualified proximity rural advisory service providers. And it increases confidence and acceptability from the farmers because it is their neighbors, their farmers are their beneficiaries. And it develops specific solutions which are very adapted to local conditions. Now, the farmers, they become group, very well organized, and they become the target group for receiving advisory services. In the conclusion, the FFS is an appropriate tool for empowering and mobilizing the farmers, creating the forum for integration of research and extension. And here we have to highlight the importance of bringing research on the table when we are talking about these rural advisory services. The productivity is significantly increased because the appropriate agronomic practices are used. And then there is this conservation of genetic resources. And here in Rwanda, we can talk up to now that 87 genetic resources are now very well identified, very well known by farmers and conserved at on-farm level. So it allows a full exploitation of the potential genetic, and it addresses the market needs, because by keeping this diversity, you are able to address any market needs. And also it is a good tool for climate change mitigation. And very important, it is one of the sustainable way of controlling pest and disease. And everybody knows that today we are facing diverse emerging pest and disease. By having this genetic resources conservation, we keep a very efficient tool of ensuring sustainable control of this. Thank you very much for your attention, and if there is any clarification, I'm ready to respond to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Buzugoro, for sharing your experience with FFS from Rwanda. Are there comments, questions to Dr. Buzugoro? Yes.
Thank you very much. I am me from Togo. I want to comment the presentation. So that is a good presentation, and I see that the approach is very nice because of the participation of the producers themselves. And then I appreciate also the facilitators who are the farmers who talk to other farmers. But I'm wondering about the sustainability of this system, which use the farmers to talk to farmers. I'm wondering about the long term, because I think in the framework of the project, you train the facilitators, and maybe you invest them doing the work, but at the long term, how will be it? Thank you. I'll respond.
Okay, thank you. That was a question on the sustainability of the approach. Can
Yes.
you have a brief answer?
Yes, for this purpose, we have to consider the sustainability at a different level. We have the technological sustainability. If I'm a farmer, I have now learned how to produce big bunches of banana. Even if the intervention is ending, I will not stop because the technologies, I understand them, I own them. So the technological sustainability is there. Now, there is another sustainability at the group level. We are seeing that most of the groups which have been put in place, as they are getting more production, they are now facing the needs to set their production. And they are starting now to be organized in cooperatives. So there is a sustainability at that level also. Now, the last level of sustainability is at institutional level. This is what I was commenting yesterday. Now we are convincing the institutions, the government, that this system can function. Now it is the government which is putting this FFS in their agenda, in their development policy documents. In Rwanda, they have different policy tools, and the FFS is clearly mentioned there just because they have seen that results are there. So we are convincing them by results. So this 3 level of sustainability is there. So I think that, but the most important is this technological one, where you disseminate technologies which are very simple and accessible to the majority of your beneficiaries.
Okay. I have 3 other persons who would like to comment. Yes, 3 other persons who would like to comment. I will take one by one, and then one last remark from you, if not we run really out of time. Okay?
Je peux parler en français?
Oui, si c'est pas trop compliqué.
Non. Merci. Je suis de la Côte d'Ivoire. Et en Côte d'Ivoire, nous utilisons cette approche. Le problème que nous avons eu au niveau de la facilitation par les producteurs, c'est la rémunération de ces facilitateurs. Donc nous associons les agents de vulgarisation et aussi les producteurs pour assurer l'animation des champs écoles paysans. Je voudrais aussi savoir quel est le taux de participation moyen dans ces écoles. Et on constate aussi que le facteur limitant de la participation, c'est la durée de la session. Plus la durée est longue, moins les producteurs viennent. Ils viendront une fois, mais ils ne viendront pas une deuxième fois. Donc, nous avons joué sur la durée au niveau de l'AES que nous avons réduit. Merci.
Okay, I try to summarize in English. Oops, sorry. Madame, she comes from Ivory Coast, and they are using this approach in their country, but they have one difficulty, which is remuneration of the facilitators. Who is paying them? And that was the first question. And the second question was about, or that was more sharing the experience, that the approach is more successful if the sessions of learning together are very brief. So that was a comment, but maybe on the first thing you can respond. But maybe let's first take the other questions and then do all in one go. Okay? Mr. Giel.
Thank you. Very interesting, the presentation. It's very related with the questions. I'd like to know how you identify and prepare these facilitators, and how you, well, if paid or not, and what are the skills needed for this facility?
You can still hold on with your answers. You have 3 questions now. So the last intervention. I remind you.
What I'm really missing is going beyond the theory of it. What are the instances that have succeeded? In Sierra Leone, I find that, for example, the farmer field schools, there's none that has been replicated after the first one with the funding. But secondly, the point is we are talking about the demand driven. That's where we want to go, to see that the farmers demand. But I think the dichotomy between the supply driven and the demand driven will leave a vacuum because there is a quasi system in between, in which all of these things are supplied and then we expect farmers to demand, even when we talk about most of the approaches that we use. So we need to make room for a third slot of an approaching extension that takes into account the interaction. In economics, they will talk about the equilibrium. We need to look at that.
Okay. Thanks for this. Thanks for this last comment. Alphonse, you got the questions very briefly?
Yes,
okay.
very briefly. So for the first question about the duration of session and the payment system, for the duration of the session, we try to keep it very brief. The rule is that the session in the FFS plot, they start at around 7 in the morning and they end at 8 or 9 latest. So it means farmers don't need to spend a long time in the FFS plot. For that, we need to also conduct this FFS study on a very limited size of the plot. But if they want to do more, they can. But our instruction is very clear. They have to spend a minimum of time in this study plot. So concerning the payment of the facilitators, they are not receiving a payment. What they are receiving is the facilitation fees for their transport and communication, because what the strategy is that they need to establish the study plot in the areas of the farmers and not in their own areas. So they need to travel. So they are receiving a transport facilitation and also a communication, because if any problem happens in the plot, they need to call and mobilize farmers. But there is no salary for them. So now for the selection of the facilitators, they are, as I mentioned, they are selected among the farmers community. They are selected not by our services, but by the community itself. What we do is that only we have defined the criteria for them to be selected as facilitators. They need to be active in the commodity of the training. If we are talking about banana, they need to be already banana producers. They need to be available to follow a seasonal training, and also they need to be available when they come back to also take time to train their neighbors. They need also to have some minimal skills in writing and reading, and they need also to be recognized in their society as honest people. And in Rwanda they say it is very strong, more than just honest, very strong, very accountable, someone on whom you can really have confidence. So they are not very well known in the community. So now for the aspect related to demand driven, which is the last part of the questions. We are, the picture I have shown about cassava is really very significant. We have studied this process in the context of high damages caused by cassava mosaic disease. But the new varieties which have been disseminated were not very well accepted by the farmers. They were reluctant to use them because they say the value at the market or the quality of the product we get from it is not equal to the quality of our traditional varieties. So we started working on these conditions, and we started to learn with them how they can recover their traditional varieties. And today, we are producing more than 60 varieties of cassava which are traditional and which are managed in this integrated crop management. So we have responded to the demand of farmers.
Okay, very brief answers, of course, to big questions. There will be more room for exchange this afternoon because we will stay in the same groups for another 1.5 hours. Thank you very much, Dr. Buzugoro, for your interesting presentation. And I hope you can still wait for your lunch because we have another interesting presentation, another 50 minutes. But even then, you will have more than 1 hour for your lunch break, so I hope it will be okay for you. Mr. Ransom, welcome.
Okay, our last section before lunch. Please try to stay awake, and I'll do my best to be entertaining. Farmer-to-farmer extension, lessons from extension providers and farmer trainers. I'm Steve Frenzel from Old Agroforestry Center in Nairobi, also called ICRAF. My co-author is Brent Simpson from Michigan State University on the MAIAS, the Modernizing Extension and Advisory Services Project. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here. We'll be looking at farmer-to-farmer extension, which has come up quite a bit in the last two sessions, I'm happy to see. Context, motivating factors, lessons. By farmer-to-farmer extension, I'm referring to the provision of training by farmers to farmers, often through a creation of farmer trainers as a definition from Scarborough. But we also know that farmer-to-farmer extension takes place without any structure, also just among farmers on an everyday basis. I'll use the term farmer trainers, but we've already heard so many different terms already: facilitators, trainers of trainers, and of course there's many others that we all know: model farmers, contact farmers, village extension workers. I heard an interesting one: village extension multipliers. There was a flurry of articles on this approach, farmer-to-farmer extension, in the 1990s, and we all know it's a very common approach. But for some reason or other, it hasn't been written about, hardly at all. There are case studies in the literature, but meanwhile, interest in the field has flourished. There was a 2012 study in Malawi that showed that out of 37 extension providers, 78% use it. And we already heard this morning about NASFAM using it. It's a very common approach, but there isn't a single study available comparing approaches used or lessons learned across organizations, across areas. So we're actually in the midst of that now, doing that. What we're finding is a lot of variation in objectives, selection criteria, selecting these farmers, in incentives. Somebody asked if you pay them or not. Lots of variation. And our findings that I'll talk about today and in the study that's coming out are based on 2,500 farmer trainers in the East African Dairy Development Program, which is a program in East Africa funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And also finding some surveys we've been conducting of organizations using farmer-to-farmer extension in Malawi and Kenya and Cameroon. This is Sarah Kawere, who's a volunteer farmer trainer in Uganda. She's a 54-year-old widow. She was selected by her farm group, or dairy group, to receive training, just a 2-day training course, and also some backstopping on feeds, on different feed technologies, both growing different feed crops and also conserving feed using hay and silage. And so she's trained the 24 members in her group and has also trained 14 other groups. And she says that her joy comes when she sees other farmers appreciate and take on new technologies. And she's motivated because being a trainer has made her popular and respected. Okay, a little bit on context and motivating factors. From the literature, we find that the approach is well suited to smallholder farmers as they learn best from peers rather than people above them. Approach above them in terms of wealth or education. Approach is particularly suited to initiatives involving producer organizations because farmers are already organized in groups, so that there's a ready group for the farmer trainer to train. And we asked extension providers what their motivations were in using the approach, and the 3 most common motivations were to reach more farmers, to reduce costs, and also to empower farmers, especially women. We asked farmers, and asked the farmer trainers themselves in various programs, in the East African Dairy Development Program, for example, in Kenya, what motivates you to become trainers? And you'll see this is an empty table that I'll fill up. But you can see along the left-hand side, there were 5 reasons that came out. One was to gain knowledge from improving one's own farm. One was helping others, altruism. Social status and networking. Project benefits, that is the specific benefits they received, sometimes an allowance, sometimes materials from the project. And income from extension activities. That is, some of them were able to earn money doing things related to their extension activities. So for example, if they had a demonstration plot, they might be selling seed from the demonstration plot. Okay, we asked them this question, which are the most important ones? We asked them for becoming a farmer trainer, when they were becoming a farmer trainer, and we asked them 3 years later, what's important motivations for remaining a trainer? So which of these do you think were the most important? Somebody guess. Social status, helping others. Well, these are the percentage that rated each one of these high, and they were allowed to rate more than one high. And you'll see that for becoming a trainer, gaining knowledge was the most important one, 61% rated that high. Helping others, very high. And these three about the same: work, social status, and networking, project benefits, and income. How about 3 years later? Do you think that these changed at all? The first three remained roughly the same. Gaining knowledge went down a little bit, helping others up a little bit, social status the same, project benefits also about the same. But look at these two. Very interesting. Farmers, as in farmer-to-farmer extension, are learning after 3 years how to make money off of their activities, either by selling inputs related to their activities, such as seed, or there's some selling services like silage, taking hay, or some are even making money providing training. And also this one came up. They said that after 3 years, they said, "Why can't stop because people need my training." I'm sort of required to continue training.
Excuse me, sir, could you have the microphone maybe close to your mouth?
Oh, sure, okay.
Moving it.
Sorry. Okay, the advantages. Costs are low, about $100 per trainer per year. I'm trying to stay perfectly still here. Most of which is for training. Farmer trainers were found to be effective in training. We studied the knowledge they had. We also went to study farmers that they reached to find out the knowledge they had and the practices they were taking up. We also found that the approach was particularly suited to women. And this came up earlier, also the example that was given from Mozambique, that in the East African Area Development Project, less than 10% of the extension staff are women. But 38% of the farmer trainers are women. Organizations in general are finding it much easier to recruit farmers as farmer trainers than it is to recruit female extension workers. Okay, so they're able to use this approach to improve their gender balance, both in terms of the recruiting of trainers and reaching more women. But there are constraints and limitations to the approach that came up also in our interviews. Farmer trainers may have high expectations of benefits and drop out. And this dropout problem is particularly a problem when in a neighboring area, a new NGO or organization comes in and starts paying their farmer trainers. You can imagine that the farmer trainer program that was developed without paying them just collapses because everybody joins the one receiving the pay. Also, it's probably not suited for complex, high-risk technologies, things like artificial insemination in cattle, maybe a lot of crop protection practices. It's not suited to areas of low population density unless transportation is provided. And care must be taken that extension staff do not view farmer trainers as a threat. We found some examples where farmer trainers were not being accepted by extension staff. So the key lessons. On average, we found women train as many farmers as do men. Sorry, that's women, but it's supposed to be men. But what was interesting was that the men cover more villages. You know, men range out further. But the women and men were training equal numbers. Second, cash payments allowance is generally not necessary and not sustainable. And they demotivate those not receiving them. Motivations for being a farmer trainer vary, and what's important is to find low-cost ways of motivating trainers. And farmers with different motivations can be benefited by different incentives. So, for example, for farmers who are motivated by altruism, helping people, social status, they can benefit by things like certificates, badges, recognition in the community, hats, T-shirts. Whereas the more entrepreneurial ones looking for income can be provided with income opportunities or help in terms of making money, earning money off of the services they're providing. Practices promoted should be fairly simple and low risk. The cost of error should be low. And another interesting finding is that farmer trainers continue actively training the farmers even several years after the project support ends, indicating sustainability approach. We found that through surveys and also through findings of other organizations, that even if they're not paid, they continue training afterwards. This is the last slide. How does farmer-to-farmer extension work in a broader RAS system? Farmer trainers are a complement, not a substitute for paid extension staff. They still need backstopping. Farmer trainers need to be linked to extension staff for periodic training and for responding to problems. And farmer-to-farmer extension can improve accountability of the extension system to the local community, as long as the community selects and evaluates farmer trainers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frenzel, for your presentation on the farmer-to-farmer extension system and for sharing your learnings about what works and what does not work with that farmer-to-farmer extension approach. We have a couple of minutes, I think, to get a few comments and questions. Yes?
Yeah, my question concerns the discovery that you found the trainers left your program and they went to an NGO program where they were being paid. Did you say that?
Yes.
But what is wrong with that? One would have thought that you could get some service provider networks, and you could even have like a cooperative or some kind of group pursue that so that you get a whole lot more out of the situation. And of course, you get a chance to maintain the funding support that the trainers need. Why did you think that was something that was acceptable? Or you must know there must be good experiences. Why? Can you tell us?
Yeah, I think the point you're making is very good. I think it wasn't the organization that reported that, it was obviously bad for that organization. But I think the point you're making was it wasn't necessarily bad for everything. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple of quick points, because we have similar thing, but it's on a different level, a different thing. So I want to ask, get some clarification. In terms of meeting, is it commodity specific or just general? Because we find when we focus on certain kind of commodities, we get into results. Secondly, in terms of when the farmer become a trainer or what have you, how much time is he or she devoted into their farm? Because we find that in our situation, for the person to maintain credibility, they also have to keep maintaining their high standard on their farm, because that is what got them in the first place. And in terms of, there's a tendency within the NGO community, within the farming community, about income. And if the aim is to get farmers rich, to make farmers rich, if you have persons providing service to make them rich, they should also make money. Okay? As long as it's all embedded in the wealth. And that is why most of these programs are very good, but they can only be sustainable if we take a practical approach to them. Okay, for example, there is no reason why an NGO providing good quality service for farmers organization should not get paid and become part of that farmers organization income stream if they provide the quality service. There's nothing wrong with that, but somewhere along the line there's this tendency to feel that everybody should provide service free. And the point is, my whole idea is I come from a farm family and we're trying to make the farmers wealthy. I don't want to see poor farmers. I want to see wealthy farmers making more money than somebody working at a bank. So those people who are providing service. Sorry.
Okay. The first one was about dropping down, and about the time spent. And so this came up quite a bit, that there was time that farmers were spending too much time in the service and not on their own farms, and that was a big reason for dropping down. Your third point was about the being paid. I would say that what's much more important than having an NGO pay a farmer to provide services is those income earning opportunities that they find that are related to the free information they're getting. So for example, if they're able to sell seed from their demo plots, to supplement the information they're providing, and they use or a service like silage in the case I was showing, making silage for other farmers.
The reason why I talk about commodity specific, for example, we have one or two, and we deal with a commodity like a special varieties with feed.
Sorry, I think it would be difficult for others to understand. Before you get into a discussion, please do this during lunch. So I think the last point. Yes.
Well, your commodity there was a feeling that they should focus on one commodity rather than two.
Right.
Yeah?
All right.
Okay, then we have two last interventions, and then you're free for lunch.
Thanks, Stephen. I like the point you made about this wasn't suitable for complex problems. And in our discussions this morning and throughout this week, we are not going to really distinguish between the nature of demand, which can be, I want better planting material, or this thing's not growing very well. So I love the method. I think it's very good indeed. But we've got to bear in mind the nature of the demand. It's going to shape the type of advice you're going to give. So you can do diarrhea and you can do headaches, but you can't do heart transplants or something.
Thank you very much. And that fits very well with what Regina Werner was saying also this morning, right? That every approach has its merits, but also its limitation. And it's a question of what is best fit for a specific situation. Okay, last intervention from this side.
Mine is more of a comment on best fit. Looking at these two approaches, you can find the last picture. You would assume it's a farmer-friendly school. This would be a farmer-friendly school. So then it goes to the issue of more of naming, naming the approaches, how they are. To move forward is another thing about, these are very good approaches which are happening, but how do we take the learning together at the national level? Assuming the same country, you have the farmer-friendly schools, you have the farmer-to-farmer, you have another one. What is the mechanism that brings this learning together? Because we need to learn from each other so that the other person is not paying the same farmers the money to facilitate, the other person is not doing it. So the issue is at the national level, we need a platform that can easily bring these rich experiences together for us to start harmonizing ourselves. And that is why for Africa, for us as APAS, we promote the learning as a country forum. That brings all these actors together to start exchanging information, but also trying to borrow from each other so that we don't start conflicting in the field. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that comment. That's fine, good comment, useful comment, another aspect to consider in the whole discussion. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks to the three presenters for your interesting presentations, generating interesting discussions. Now it's time for lunch. Lunch is in the same restaurant as was the breakfast, and you are having 65 minutes, and we'll meet again in this room at 2:15. Fine? Okay, enjoy your lunch.